Obviously, I sort of found you via your organization, the Football Family. If you wouldn't mind just telling me a bit about your experience in the game and what the Football Family is, basically.
Well, the Football Family kind of generated from the fact that myself and my colleague at the time, Adam Wild, we were non-league football managers, and we had a few young pros on loan from us from local professional clubs, and we noticed a sort of a deterioration in their character, demeanor, performances. Not attitude, never question their attitude, just in terms of their outlook and in terms of their communication skills. It just took a dip at a certain point in time. They arrived excellent, then they dipped, and we knew that the decision time is crucial for scholars, and that was the point in case for some of the young lads that we had. So we just thought, how do we help this? How do we create something that supports what they're going through and allows them still to flourish and in a non-league environment as opposed to the pro environment, just in case that decision is a rejection and it is a career termination at that point, at that club. Can we then instill the love of the game and or at least instill some challenges and some processes to help these players move on and build their confidence and self-esteem? And so on. And it also, look, this is a 20-year lived experience for myself and Adam, and for the players that we incorporated into the mentoring scheme. I've been at Crystal Palace, I've been at Southampton, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, and it's a difficult time to decide who gets a contract and who doesn't. It's a difficult time to decide who may have potential, who may not. We're not talking on, specific benchmarks that will and indicators of potential performance. They're not clear cut. They're grey, and it does come down to opinion, and it does come down to an educated opinion, but an opinion nonetheless. And it's an opinion that you'll put your side of the story across and your belief in that player's physical, technical, psychological factors, and so on. And as part of the team at Crystal Palace, I was new to it, and I was a young practitioner, didn't have the skill set to necessarily understand it at the time. I certainly saw differences in the youngsters. I saw differences in the staff in the weeks leading and the weeks post players being deselected. That was very difficult because you're saying goodbye to lots of players, and you don't really know how to act and behave around them in that short period of time. From when they're being released. So it's anxious. I think everybody's anxious around that time, from the cook to the kit man, to the head coach of the academy, to the manager of the first team. It doesn't matter who you are. It's an anxious time. And you're hoping that you're able to deliver good news to the majority, but we know there'll be some bad news for others. So that's kind of where it emanated from. And we thought, how do we do this? So we literally sat down and went, how do we ensure that these players that are coming to us, we can identify them quickly and we can help them quickly? And for me, it was a bit of a brainwave. We just thought, well, they're not going to listen to some two old fuddy-duddies. Young players aren't, unless you have an esteemed reputation in a sport, or you have a longevity with that person and you've built up a rapport, they're not going to listen to you. So, we thought they would listen to players because they're of similar age and these players have gone through those experiences. So we brought in Jack Stevens and Sam McQueen for an initial discussion around this, and they were all in. From their perspective, it was, we can mentor and help this, we can talk, we can invest our time into these players, and hopefully, they'll listen, and hopefully they'll build some kind of rapport, so that they're not left on their own, they're not isolated. Because at the time, that's what we were finding, 5-6 years ago, when this really snowballed, different academies were approaching it in a different way, and some weren't approaching it in a very good way. Unfortunately, that there wasn't the contact post deselection, there wasn't the considered approach, there wasn't the support mechanisms in place. You kind of went and we all hoped that you went on to pastures new and did well, and that's obviously not the case for many of them, because you know, football clubs are fantastic in supporting the player while they're there. Once they're gone, that wasn't necessarily the case. But the caveat to as it's got much better, Rory.
Yeah.
It's got exponentially better. Can it still improve? Yes, but it's got exponentially better. But at the time, it wasn't there, and the players filled that void for us. They delivered, you know, a sounding board. They delivered a shoulder if necessarily, if they need to lean on them, and they just invested some time into these young lads, and it worked at a level of, we could see there was a difference. We could see that these players were being spoken to in certain positions. So in our naivety, we went, well, you're a defender and you're a defender, so why not get you two guys together and discuss it? And I remember Jack's first meeting with Connor and you know, talking about defending and positioning, and then they came to watch them play in a non-league game just up the road at Tottenham, and invested a bit of time in. And if you can imagine, as a youngster that's been released or about to be released from a football club, if another football club turn up and another professional player from another football club turn up and invest time in watching you and talking to you afterwards, it does help to repair that initial dent in their confidence and self-esteem. And I think that's sometimes all that's needed for them to then kick on and find another avenue. So rather long-winded response, but kind of that's where it came from.